Dear Craftworldians, hello and welcome. My name is Marko Miladinovic and today I will paint my first sculpted bust. Everyone meet Trisht The Steadfast. He's one of the characters from my own fantasy world I named Era of Providence. It is a great feeling to bring pieces of my imagination to life and also to learn new skills, such as digital sculpting. Both Alexandra and I hope you will enjoy this new lesson, where I will, next to walking you through progress of painting Trisht, share new ways and insights of using techniques such as wetblending, underpainting minis and overlapping layers, bringing more character to your piece. Starting with the most lively areas of the face using crimson red, I wet blend this paint with magenta, creating nice tonal transition and gradient while adding light ultramarine in the lower area of the face. I create those tones of the face as underpainting, with the goal of creating a good base tone for the skin and sketch the facial volumes for easier build of tones in later steps. When wet blending paints and tones, I stay focused to move paint in direction of following the sculpt shapes and overall volumes of, in this case, face. Keeping ultramarine in shades magenta as transition and crimson red as a base tone. Make sure that underpainting or base tone is darker than the overlapping layers, mid-tones and highlights, in order to create a good contrast and push tones to the lighter value. We treat underpainting as shades, then we add midtones followed by highlights. When this layer dries, I will add primary blue and primary red to boost saturation of some areas and add more interest to the volumes. Starting by adding maple yellow to my crimson and magenta mix, I create first skin tone of Trisht. Those are midtones, and I use them to create shapes of light placement of Trisht face that helps me define his character and facial features. I create a variety of skin tones by mixing Naples yellow with crimson and magenta and with primary blue, adding white paint as well as gradually building highlights. If I would give you a recipe for knowing where to put each tonal variation, I would say follow the underpainting sketch. Remember that I had most of the reds in the center of the face, magenta goes around the reds, transiting into a blue. In the same manner, I treat all the midtones and highlights. Most of the yellowish reds, warm skin tones are in the center, and they are in the highlights of the face, while lilacs and pastel blues mentioned mixes of paints with white are in the shadows and frame of the face. I wanted to paint bright lilac eyes for Trisht, so I brightened the eyeball first and then sketched the irises. Make sure to create a bright eye surface so the eye pops out, but not too bright, so not to create clear white, since we will add the highlight reflection as a finishing touch to depict shine in his eyes. This is how it looks when it's done. A few simple right steps and you are there. When it comes to ears, I'm using the same skin tone as I made for face, focusing on building the right volumes of the ears, with placing light placements of the midtones and highlights as light is coming from the top. Keeping the underpainting in shade areas. To add stronger light from one side, I'm adding it as a source light. Strong warm light reflection over one side of the face. This light will follow its flow and direction on the other materials as well in later progress. I added intense yellow in the most brightest highlights of the skin at one side of his face. Once again, let's proceed with wet blending, but this time I will use my brush strokes and expressions to depict the metal texture while mixing dark metal values. I create a quick, short brush strokes following the curved shape of the helmet horizontally. I'm placing darker tones on the side of the helmet, instantly moving to bright ones as I'm reaching the middle of the helmet where the light placement leaves reflection. By closely moving tones only on the edge of transition, tones don't blend too much, and with this I achieve stronger contrast. By this brush movement, layers, transition and texture of the layer, I create these lines that depict the texture of polished metal. I'm adding yellow ochre for a light reflection on the base tone, following the sketch of the light I already did on the Trisht face. I'm adding a bit of red tone as an ambience reflection, but also to make more variation in the transition and to kill some of the green tones. This red also helps me in keeping the yellow values warmer. I proceed with adding intense yellow value of the light source, in smaller areas. To proceed with highlights, I focus on smaller areas of light reflections on the helmet, keeping the wider areas dark. Main focus is still on the brushstrokes, and with those brushstrokes I create an interesting metal surface and texture that bring more character to this piece. So far, you can see the ambience that I have achieved with this color palette. And let me bring you some storytelling behind it. Long summer has ended. Old Trisht is dutifully at his post, guarding the city walls. He wonders if this is the last summer he will ever witness. His shield seems to grow heavier by the day, worn and dented, same as he is. First days of the fall always remind him that every circle has its beginning and its end. While watching citizens pass and go about their business, he recalled the days when he earned his nickname, one that he still proudly wears, the Steadfast. Gods, he was young and foolish then. In those days, he would charge headfirst where others would not dare step. Regardless, he cannot help but smile and tell himself that it has been a good life. No matter what happened tomorrow, or the next day, or the day after, old Trisht the Steadfast will stay at his post, guarding the city walls, as he always did, until the very end. Keeping Trisht's character in mind and color palette so far, I wanted to frame the focal point, his face, so I will keep those dark values of blue and brown around. Wet blending light ultramarine and primary blue for fabrics around the face, keeping more saturation in the focal point. While in the lower areas, latter materials, I will create very dark values with burnt umber, dark Prussian blue and light ultramarine, creating a volume and gradient in one step. While on the source light side, illuminated area, I will show those tones brighter and saturated as they are under the light. I will use burnt sienna amber and yellow ochre. I am creating connection between all those tones while the paint is still wet. As soon as the paints start to dry, leave it be. If some areas need repetition, it's better to add tones when the layer dries than to lose all those tones if all are mixed together too much. For the saturation and connections between warm and cold, I will add magenta and red over some blue areas rather than adding yellow over. This way I make connections between tones and I lose too much of a greens, creating better harmony in my color composition. Few more refinements and details, and the old Trisht is ready. I hope you enjoyed following my painting process and lessons on color use, tonal values, volumes and brushstrokes in creation like characters such as Trisht and many others. Don't forget that all our tutorials are lessons that can be used for many projects of your liking. Also, if you missed it, Trisht The Steadfast is my first bust sculpted for our Craftworld Studio art line, Era of Providence. The following bust is Bastona the Picky Sellsword, and more is yet to come. Stay tuned, share your works with us on our Craftworld Studio Discord channel and social medias using the hashtags from the screen. Kind regards from Alexandra and I.